sharpen up here. Last minute, let's get started.
Oh, I gotta, no, I gotta get it. I gotta teach.
You try, good time. No, that's good.
Joy. Uh-oh. Okay. No, Pastor. No, Pastor. Feed them sugar and save them away. We can do it that morning.
Alright, let's get started here. Let's get started. That's okay. Well, let's tighten it up a little bit here. Let's get together here. Let's get started. I need an air horn. Oh, yeah. All right. Does anybody have any announcements for the sake of the whole group? Announcements for the sake of the whole group. Elizabeth! Quiet, please! Great, Christmas store is open. Thank you. All right, Pat.
We're going to seminary at the end of this week. Any donations, please have them in the box in the closet.
All right, so donations for Fort Wayne Seminary in the box in the closet. Very good. Or just talk with Sue. We'll get it to where it needs to go. By what day? Wednesday?
Sure.
By Wednesday. Your deadline is Wednesday. All right, unless you're going. Yes.
I will take script orders today. Raise Right, I should know their name. I'll take Raise Right orders today, or next Sunday, or the third Sunday of December. If you order today, I will have them on Wednesday. If you order next week, they'll be here next Wednesday. We should have that last order before Christmas, but that may not come till Thursday, depends on shipping.
Hey, this is it.
Come on, everybody. If you ordered any, take them, please.
Here's the sign-up sheet. If you would like one, sign up for one. Right here.
Yeah, if they look pathetic, they're still good. Put them in the ground. They'll be there next year.
There you go. They will rise. So the sign-up sheet's over there on the table. Check, you got something to write with? I got something to write with. Just cross it off when you get it. There you go. All right. All right. Ms. Sisman.
Next Sunday is the deadline for the gift cards for Jeremy Hansen and his family so that we can get them to them before they go on break from SEM and use them for Christmas, hopefully. So if you have any questions, you can ask me. They live in Columbia City, but they're not far from Fort Wayne. They do a lot of their stuff in Fort Wayne, so any gift card would kind of work for, whatever would be in those areas. You can always look up online, but there's just the normal stuff, So, and I think, Allison, if they order from you today, would they get here? Okay.
They'll be here in time for next week.
And if you order your gift cards from her, then the school benefits too, so it's kind of a double yay. So that, and then coming up is the Christmas food baskets. I believe delivery is on the 18th, I want to say. Right, at 11.
The Saturday.
Saturday the 18th
That's
at
17.
At 11.
17.
17, whatever day that is. One of those days. So, thank you. She knows every day in December, Lisa does. So, if you're going to bring stuff, make sure that you sign up. I don't know if the sign-up sheet is going around.
I think there's a sign-up sheet in here. If not, I know there's one upstairs by the church entrance.
Right, and you can always let us know, and we'll have it so you can look and remember what you signed up for. So, and we're delivering at 11, but I believe we're gonna do what we did in the past, whereas encourage people to come and pick theirs up, and if they can't, then we will deliver, because that worked pretty well last year.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm trying to think, because Sue's not here today, she's sick, you need to pray for her.
All right.
This is a bad time of year for the church secretary to be
It's
sick.
the most wonderful.
Yes, right. So, if you have any questions, let us know, and we'll see try to give you answers. How's that?
Okay, thank you.
And we love kids helping and handing out. Everybody who comes and gets their boxes are really inspired when the kids come up to them and say, "Merry Christmas!" And they're very efficient. If you ever want to see some efficiency, these kids.
Yeah, and the efficiency starts on Friday afternoon, because usually our aftercare students from our school, the ones who the parents will pick them up right away, they, with Sue Saunders and a few others on even Friday afternoon, will start sorting and collecting and getting ready for all the boxes. So that's Saturday morning. It moves pretty quick, and you see the Bethlehem students have already gotten a head start on collecting some of those items. So, yeah, there we go. All right, any other announcements for the sake of the whole group? For the whole group. Come on. Go twice. Dear President, anything?
Nope. Well, again, just thank you for everybody who participated last week on our voters. It went well and good feedback. So.
Yep. Yeah. All right, just a couple upcoming events. Advent is here. Happy New Year, everybody. Yes, dinners will start at 6 p.m. on Wednesday. Joyful Noise, a couple families will be sponsoring that one. We're doing soup and sandwiches. There'll be a couple different soups and some sandwich materials for that. School board, I think, is covering December 7th, and I don't know if there's someone signed up for the 14th. If you'd like to sponsor or grab a couple families to sponsor, that's totally fine. The sign-up sheet's right there, so it goes around. The nice thing is, if you sign up to sponsor, you get to set the menu.
If you're a Thrive-It member, you have enough time to get a Thrive in Action Team card to pay for the meal if you do it this weekend.
Yeah, if you sign up for this weekend and do a Thrive in Action card, you get $250 and a gift card to buy like all your materials. Yeah. All right, and then Christmas caroling, December 18th at 4 p.m. on Sunday. Our school has a couple big programs coming up. So our band, which is fantastic, by the way, the band will play here, I think, in our gym, Phys Ed room on Thursday, November 8th at 7 p.m.
December.
No, yes, December. Yes. The date is correct, though. It is Thursday, December 8th. And then the Christmas program will be Thursday, December 15th at the Hope Hotel, right on the edge of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And you do not need base access to get there. You do not need base access to get there. All right, and Pastor England wanted to announce that he is in Florida. He made it, safe and sound. No Bible class this coming Wednesday. Class will resume on December 7th in the church basement. All right. Catechism du jour is the second commandment. So, dear class, what is the second commandment? Together. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God. And what does this mean? We should fear and love God so that we do not curse, swear, use satanic arts, lie, or deceive by his name, but call upon it in every trouble, pray, praise, and give thanks. Okay, Sunday school is dismissed if you haven't gone already. All right, we are on a new study. All right. They did change the color. All right. So, we'll call this Celebrating the Church History Saints. All right. So, what we'll cover today is kind of like an introductory lesson about commemorating the saints, the what, the why, and the how. So, that's my overview. We'll talk about what is the commemoration of the saints. And after that, we'll talk about why we should commemorate the saints. And then, what will be the pattern, what's the plan for our Bible study, and we'll call that the how. So, the first one up is what is the commemoration of the saints? So, good old Noah Webster. Commemoration, in the dictionary definition, means to call to remembrance by a solemn act, to celebrate with honor and solemnity, intended to preserve the remembrance of that person or to preserve the remembrance of a particular event. So, using that definition, okay, call it to remembrance by a solemn act, celebrating a person or an event, or trying to preserve the remembrance of that person or event. What sort of things do we commemorate? What do we commemorate?
4th of July.
4th of July, right? What's so important about the 4th of July? What are we commemorating on the 4th of July?
Signing Declaration of Independence.
Signing the Declaration of Independence, right? So what do we do to commemorate that? What are some things that we do to commemorate that event?
Blow things up.
Blow things up! Shoot off fireworks! Parades, yeah. What else do we do to commemorate that event?
Symbology.
Barbecue, yeah. You know, one time I was 4th of July on vacation in Europe, and we were staying at a hotel in the middle of nowhere, well, just outside of a big city in Italy. And we were staying in a hotel with some Brits. And it was 4th of July. So what do you guys do? What do you Americans do to celebrate the 4th of July? Do you burn Union Jacks? No, sir, we do not burn Union Jacks. I am American by birth, and I have never burned a Union Jack. You're welcome. All right. But, okay, so let me think about this for a moment. If we focus on the word solemn and honor and solemnity, do we commemorate the 4th of July like a solemn act? Are there any solemn acts that we do? We blow stuff up, we barbecue, we drink beer.
Sing the Star Spangled.
Okay. We do go to attention and sing the Star Spangled Banner. We take off our hats, right? We take off our hats and we sing the Star Spangled Banner, put our hands over our hearts. Yeah.
We recall what it took to gain our freedom.
Yeah. There are times, especially in those national holidays, where we do pause and give thanks and maybe even have a moment of silence sometimes to remember those who have fallen. For the defense of our country and during those early days, right? And so, maybe that's a good answer. One of the things we do to commemorate is a time of silence, right? We take a moment to pause, right? Whether that's at a sports arena or at some kind of program or gathering, right? We do spend that moment. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the only days of the year that we make an extra effort to make sure we have our flag down.
Okay, yeah, we give that extra effort, right? There are certain days, and yeah, 4th of July is probably like the #1 day, right? Where we get that effort to make sure that our flags are out. Okay, good. Or to make sure that they are presented properly, right? And sometimes, how many of you, if you have an American flag, still, even though you're not on base and you're not under orders anymore, how many of you still kind of solemnly put up the flag? Be honest. Okay, you still solemnly put up the flag, right? Right? What are some things that you do to solemnly remember as you put up the flag? What some of the things do you do or don't do?
Like bring it in at night so it's not out in the.
Okay. Yeah, unless you got a light, right? You bring it in at night.
You hang it correctly.
Hang it correctly, right? Yeah. All right.
I think because you do it too, it's to, I don't want to say passive aggressively, but to remind everybody else. It's not just that you do it for yourself, but you do it to remind those around.
I think there's a way to show that without being passive aggressive, right? That we want to set a good example.
Yeah.
Right? And if we just leave it at that, right? Not grumble in our minds and hearts of, man, oh man, if only more people would be this. No, but just simply say, hey, I do this because I want to set a good example, and leave it at that, right?
I noticed in our neighborhood, I started back when I married hubby, we live on a corner, and I put the little flags out around the corner. Now I have like 3 other houses that are doing the same thing. We've never talked to each other, we've never said anything, but it's something that you do as a witness and that others, whether they want to pick it up or not.
Yeah, good. Any other things that we might commemorate, either persons or events that we commemorate? Yeah.
9/11.
9/11, right? Yeah, September 11th, right, 2001.
Pearl Harbor Day.
Pearl Harbor Day. So what are some things that we do to commemorate 9/11?
You go down to Fairborn where they have the ceremony.
Yes,
1 o'clock.
Fairborn still has a ceremony. So many years after the fact, they still have a yearly ceremony, usually right on September, I think it is, yeah, it's usually on
1 o'clock in the afternoon.
September 11th. I think on Sundays they move it to 1 o'clock, but other days of the week it's usually in the morning. And it's over by Calamityville, which is right by Rona Community. Also, 235 as you're headed towards the highway. Yeah, they still do a commemoration.
Beaver Creek has the piece of the tower. I mean, the tower got broken up and pieces have gone all over the United States.
Yeah.
Being a piece where it used to be.
Yeah. All right. Do we do anything for Pearl Harbor Day? To commemorate?
Celebrate my birthday.
That's
what.
I hope that's not a solemn act, man. All right. What else do we do?
I remember to be able to share it in the public is on Facebook.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we post things on Facebook, right? We put like little we have our little badges, we have our banners, right? We color our profiles with like red, white, and blue or this and that, right? To kind of remind people, raise awareness, take a moment and pause, right? For Christian, give thanks to God, for this, or ask God for healing and peace and hope despite this tragic event, right? Yeah, Bailey.
In terms of other things that we commemorate, I mean, we don't do all of them, but there are a number of different sort of festivals of saints here in the church that we recognize.
Yes. Yes. Now we're getting into more of our study, right? That there are saints' days that we sometimes observe and celebrate, right? Or certain events that in the church we observe and celebrate. And I'm going to say that for the next slide, but there are a couple that I think are really important. All right. What is the most memorable commemoration you've ever witnessed?
I guess of our fallen when they traveled their bodies through the country and there's such a mass that gathers along the road to honor them.
Yeah, yeah. What's so great about it? Like, did you
Just an outpouring.
Just an outpouring of grief and support and gratitude.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other most memorable commemorations you've ever witnessed? Yeah. Good Friday. Yeah, we commemorate Jesus, right? And his death on the cross for our salvation. Oh, we got another one back here.
Well, it's not necessarily us, but weddings, public celebrity weddings.
Okay.
We have British for other Hollywood weddings.
Now you're in trouble. Some of us got up at 2 a.m. to watch it.
Okay. All right. Celebrity wedding. There you go. Most memorable commemoration, yeah.
And what about Memorial Day?
Okay, right. Memorial Day, right? It even is in the title, right? Memorial. We remember those who have given their life in service for the defense of our country.
And the president always puts a wreath.
Yeah, yes. Sometimes you see the national ceremony, right? There are certain traditions that they will do. Most towns still have a Memorial Day service or some kind of gathering, right? In my old town, they had a parade, and the parade actually led to the cemetery.
Yeah.
To the veteran memorial in the middle of the cemetery, and we would parade all the way there and then have a short service and then chicken dinner afterwards. It was great. It was great. Yeah.
The Queen's funeral was rather memorable.
Whose?
The Queen's
The
funeral?
Queen's funeral, right? Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, will they remember it every year, right? As spectacular as it was, right? How will they commemorate that every year? Will they? I think they probably will, right? But the question is how, right? And we'll have to wait and see how.
As Paul,
Plates, cups.
Yeah, plates and cups. Hey, that's good.
good collection.
All right. So, you know, a lot of times we talk about this being solemn. Yeah.
You got a queen cup now?
So at one point, we say that these remembrances are solemn, but another synonym for to commemorate is to celebrate. Okay, so sometimes we celebrate with a solemn act. Okay, and I think that's actually a great balance, if you will, with what we do when we commemorate, especially the saints, those who have been faithful before us in the Holy Christian Church. So what was done to commemorate the saints? So I'm going to use a phrase that was used in the Lutheran Confessions, in the Augsburg Confession, and the Apology of the Augsburg Confession. And sometimes they talked about the cult of the saints. And that just sounds really bad. He's like, the cult of the saints, right? Now, bear me with this for just a moment, is that it can be like the cultus, or the group, or the kind of systems, if you will, as a good thing. Okay? The one good thing, or thing we can say, is that there was a system in place, even during the Reformation, before, during, and after, where there was a system of remembrance. That they would tell the story of God's faithful in the past. And that was part of the regular worship patterns and learning patterns and speaking patterns of the Christian church, even during and before the days of the Reformation. And that saints' days, as mentioned earlier, and observing what we call heavenly birthdays, right? The day when they, if we know the date, right, the day when they died, especially a martyr, right, someone who was killed for the faith, right? Those are days where Christians have historically celebrated their heavenly birthday, right? The day when they departed from this earth to be with Christ in heaven, especially when they gave of their life for a public witness and testimony of Christ. All right, so in that way we could say this is a good thing, but usually we talk about the cult of the saints as a bad thing. And of course, once we start worshiping Christians who were before us, or looking to them for our blessing, or looking to them for help in our time of need, or objects connected to them, is that there are, even to this day, there are places of worship that have pictures of certain saints, and people line up to pray to those images, to pray to those things. For example, I remember in the Eastern Orthodox Church, when I was in Russia, there was, I don't remember the saint's name, but it was a lady saint, and you know, women who aspired to get pregnant would pray, literally line up and pray to this picture of Saint so-and-so, asking her to become pregnant, right? And we would say that this is idolatry. Like, that is idolatry. And unfortunately, when we go too far with the saints, we put forward the saints as intercessors for Christ, right? And can someone read 1 Timothy? Get 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 5. And then Art, do you have a comment?
For there is one God, there is one mediator between God and men, the man, Christ Jesus.
There you go.
My question is, why do we have intercessors instead of mediators?
I think that came from Augsburg Confession. I think I looked at it from the Augsburg Confession. But either way, right?
It's a big difference.
How is it a difference?
Mediator means, how is something brought to me, mediated to me? Christ is mediating salvation to us. Intercession means I'm interceding for somebody for some particular reason.
Right.
And what would it mean to intercede for Christ?
We don't need to, right? We can go directly to Christ, right? Especially in our prayers.
Oh, so you could.
Yeah,
And
so
there's
we
that.
can go directly
Okay.
to Christ, right? And we go to God in our prayers in and through Jesus Christ, right? The one mediator or
Intercede
intercessor.
to
Again,
Christ.
depending on their Bible translation, right? That we can access the Heavenly Father and approach His throne of grace in and through Christ. And we have that one man, right, that God has given. And His name is Jesus, right? Not St. Anne, not St. Joe, not St. John, but Jesus Himself, right? He is our intercessor. He is our, again, depending on translations, He's our mediator. All right, so commemoration practices today. In the first part of the Lutheran service book, there is a list of saints that we can commemorate with a list of dates. In the sample prayers and paragraphs, so in our worship resources that you can get from lcms.org, there are simple prayers of thanksgiving or little summary paragraphs for each of these saints to commemorate that we can learn. And actually I use that as kind of like the planning stages for this Bible study to kind of at least get a general understanding of who these people are, especially if they're not as familiar to us, and as a good guide to help research some of these people. I have seen in a couple places in Missouri Synod churches that one petition of the prayer of the church would be to give thanks to God for raising up a faithful servant, so-and-so, Saint so-and-so, whose heavenly birthday is today. There's a church in the Detroit area called Zion, Detroit, and they have in the past included certain saints to, like I said, to give thanks to God for their faithful witness.
I'm sorry, I missed it, if you've already said it. Who's on this board of saint electees? I mean, who determines who,
Yeah,
that's a good question. I understand it was a Roman Catholic church, I think they both decided that, but, I mean, like Noah is Tuesday.
Yeah, Noah's Tuesday.
Commemorate Noah on Tuesday.
Yeah.
I mean, I never thought he was a saint, but.
Yeah. Now that list that has before you, right? There's a bunch of biblical characters,
including
right? Old Testament and New Testament.
And Wyneken.
Yeah.
I mean,
and you have a lot of people throughout the history of the church.
Yeah.
Right?
So who decides?
There's a committee.
There is a committee.
There is a committee. Yeah, just like any other work, right? There's a committee.
By the Senate. The Senate has a committee.
And there might be, in the back of the hymnal and the acknowledgments, there might be a list of like who served on various committees and subcommittees to develop the hymnal. Now I know also that I haven't double checked the research, but I have a feeling and suspicion that many of the saint days do correlate with like the Roman Catholic or Eastern Orthodox Church. Right, that there usually is like a tradition, passed down throughout the centuries that, reserved a certain date for St. Ambrose of Milan, right, or Gregory of Nazianzus, right, or any of the other church history saints on that list. Yeah, or for example, there's an obvious one, right, St. Nicholas, right? What's the date for St. Nicholas? December 6th. December 6th, right? Feast for St. Nicholas, right? That one is a church history, a church tradition that even goes before Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. Right? And we just
So this is a committee appointed by the Senate then? Is that something they do at the Senate?
I'm not sure how they developed the hymnal. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know
I
how they
haven't
developed
read
it.
anything in any minutes or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how they do it. It'd be fun to serve on one of those committees.
I believe there's,
Well,
there's an elected office that has to do with the hymnal.
Right.
And then they just pick committees and ask people.
Yeah.
A particular expertise, like you would be.
Yeah.
It's a really musician,
Yeah.
would you be on the hymnal committee?
So yeah. I think in one way we say that our celebration of the Reformation is an example of a commemoration, right? It's commemorating nailing of the 95 Theses on the church door in Wittenberg. It also is commemorating other milestones during the Reformation, including some pastors and churches like to commemorate and retell the story of how Martin Luther had the castle tower experience and just realized the gospel when he read the book of Romans, for example. Or when the princes and electors of certain areas in Germany risked their very necks before Emperor Charles V, right? And they commemorate certain events during the Reformation, usually on Reformation Sunday, right? Or we commemorate just Martin Luther, right? Or one of the other reformers.
He created High Deutsch. He created the first written language of German.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All Saints Day, right?
Yes.
Another one where we commemorate those who have departed in the faith, usually at the local parish, right? We list the names of those who have died from our congregation that past year, right? Or from that last November. And here at Bethlehem, we actually can list every single saint who died in the Lord from Bethlehem over the years. So eventually that will spill over in the 3 pages, but for right now we can do that.
Oh. Yeah, Paul Grimm is the executive director of the Commission on Worship.
There you go.
That's right. And then they just,
So that he is in charge of making sure they get all the appropriate committees, yeah, and subcommittees. Yeah. We could say that maybe Christian funerals, visitation, devotions. Sometimes that can also be a commemoration where families or Christians may gather together to commemorate, the faith and life of their departed loved one, right? I have seen, good practices, regarding that as well. Any other worthwhile practices you've witnessed of commemorating the saints, remembering the saints? Yes.
how about every Sunday at communion, we say with all the hosts of heaven?
Yeah, with angels, archangels, and with all the hosts of heaven. We sing together, holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. All right? And knowing that we sing along with the saints in heaven. Right? Same thing with like, this is the feast, or any of the other hymns of praise that we sing, right after the Kyrie. Good. Yeah.
We name our children after.
Yeah. We sometimes use the names of the saints for our children, right? Martin Luther, right? He was named after Saint Martin of Tours, right? The first chaplain. Or at least that's what his name chart comes
By the way, his wife is also a saint here.
Yeah, yeah.
Because she was married.
Because she had to marry, she stayed married to Martin Luther. That's why she's a saint.
So I should go and tell my wife she's a saint, huh?
There you go. That may score some bonus points for you, sir. Yeah.
Some of these have shifted to more of a cultural celebration, but the Christ Mass, the Hallow Mass, and even like St. Patrick's Day. These sorts of, now they're more of a indoctrinated into the local culture, but they're still reflective of celebrating certain types of saints, and of course All Saints Day was part of that Hallow Mass that became Halloween.
Yeah, and I think the key is, not for drunkenness and debauchery, right, but for remembrance, right, for celebrating, for thanking God for certain faithful members of the church. Yeah.
Never forget Valentine's Day.
Oh yeah, St. Valentine's Day.
The chapels, we used to do.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what.
All right, I'd like to move on. I think we got a pretty good feel for commemoration. Yeah. All right, good. Why commemorate the saints? All right, so, as we're kind of talking about, especially the ones that have been beneficial, what's so important about remembering with honor certain people or events in the past, like in general? Why do we do this? Why is this important? Why take a day? Why do a parade? Why gather as a community?
Maybe we can learn something from it.
Okay, there's an opportunity for learning, right? There's an opportunity for learning because many of these events happened before we were born, right? We weren't there, right? But yet, the generations before us kept it going for a reason, right? Good. What else? What other reasons? Why is it important to remember with honor certain people or events in the past? Yeah.
Well, there's just something extraordinary about either what they did or how they lived that we aspire to.
Aspiration, right? Aspiration. There's something great about them that was like, oh yeah, we should be like that too, right? We should stand up for freedom just like they did, right? We should be willing to risk our necks for the defense of our country, right? Or, any other, we can act heroically when there is danger, right? We can still do our duty. We can still do our job even when it's tough. Yeah.
That is shaping the role where we are now with, things like adoption and spread of Christianity through, George Washington and President's Day. Some part of where we are now is based on their contributions to put us here.
Yeah. And I think also, thanks to God, right? That God has given us heroes. He's given us faithful servants, both in church and in state, right? To provide for us, to protect us, to help us. And I think it's worth retelling the story.
To show us how to do it.
Yeah.
To do it right.
You're right. And it's also, that aspiration comes back too, right? I mean, they, when we were in officer training school, I always enjoyed those times where we could sit down in the lecture hall and listen to someone retell the story of some of the greatest heroes of the Air Force, right? Pitzenberger and Sergeant Snuffy, right? It's good to hear those stories, number one, because it's always nice to sit back and relax a little bit, that I don't have to take notes, and I don't have to worry about there's a test on this, and just let them tell the story and just be amazed, But there's also that aspiration of do your duty even when it's hard, right? Be self-sacrificial, right? Just like so-and-so, right? And we remember their heroism and their sacrifice that they gave. Right. Yeah.
There's no collective history if you don't remember.
Yeah, the collective history, right? The institutional knowledge. You cannot assume it.
You can't pass it on if you don't
And
pass
if you
it
don't
on.
pass it on, it will get lost, right? That's why I love, for example, the work of Maggie Nelson, is that she's working on making sure that she gets all that information. And Helga Clark before her also did a really good job of collecting notes and assembling and organizing them so that the institutional knowledge of all things like Altar Guild and the decorations in our church are not lost, right? And then they can be handed down.
Well, and the New Testament talks about these things you've learned, pass them on to reliable men.
Yeah.
And I assume women. Obviously, you pass them on or they just die.
Yeah. Yeah. Which actually gets to the second question. What's so important about remembering with honor certain faithful Christians or events in Christian history?
It connects us with the past. It shows us how God has been working from the beginning till now.
Yeah.
That He's inspired, individuals, groups, and caused certain things to happen.
Yeah.
So it connects us with that. So we're one community. It's not necessarily that we're, isolated from history.
Yeah, we're not isolated, right? And maybe I'm going to use a related word, continuity, right? That God is continuous, and His work is continuous, His aid, his salvation is continuous. His presence for the church is continuous. There's that continuity there, right? You know, we're not alone in our certain place, and we're not alone in our certain time, right? I mean, there's that continuity, yeah.
I think G.K. Chesterton, I'm trying to remember the exact phrase, I think called democracy of the dead.
Mm-hmm.
That they're still with us, they still have a voice in what's going on. And that they need not ever be excluded.
Yeah. And it's one for encouragement, right? It's one to lift us up and aspire or inspire us too, right? And encourage us to walk in the faith, right? And Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1 is usually a common verse that is quoted when, you know, talking about the commemoration of the saints, right? Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. Right? That we have a great cloud of witnesses that are still alive with us today, right? We're not alone, but we're also not alone time-wise, right? That God has given us many faithful witnesses before, whose their story can also inspire us and help us to repent of our sin and live in Christ, right? Just like the faithful of the past. In our Augsburg Confession, Article 21, it says, our churches teach that the remembrance of the saints is to be commended in order that we may imitate their faith and good works according to our calling. Right? We want to imitate their faith and imitate their good works according to our calling. Right? So your calling in life might be a little different than St. Ambrose of Milan, right? Or your calling in life might be different than King David, right? But are there similarities? Yeah. Like we want to have the musicianship. We aspire to be musicians like King David, right? Or, yeah.
Just shows the weakness that God uses people that are not perfect to create His will.
Yeah. Yes. Good. The persistence.
Okay, Tamara, you don't have to laugh. I know I'm not perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
For somebody that has got such a big mouth, I can't hear you.
You're lucky.
Wow. We are.
I love you, Tamara.
All right. So then later on in the apology of the Augsburg Confession, actually you cover the third one, right? So again, very similar to the original Augsburg Confession, but again they give 3 reasons why commemorating the saints is beneficial to the church. Number 1, to give thanks and praise to God, right? God has given faithful servants to His church, right? We have heroes of the faith, and we should thank and praise God because He's given us these people, right? Number 2, for the strengthening of our faith, we see the mercy of God extended to His saints of old. And kind of as your banter proves, or what we were going for here, is yes, the saints are imperfect people, right? And God was merciful to them, just as He is merciful to you, right? And merciful to me. And we sometimes see their imperfections, and we sometimes may imitate their imperfections, right? But actually it kind of gets us to that last part, right? That we want to emulate the good, right? We want to imitate their faith, and we want to imitate their holy living according to our own callings in life, right? We want to focus on the good things about them and aspire to live according to their faithfulness. Yeah.
As we get to learn more about these people, you know, we have a much better sense then of how to relate to them. It humanizes them, for better or for worse.
Mm-hmm.
And so the ability to imitate their faith is, and holy living to whatever extent we can, seems more attainable when we understand better that they're also sinful human beings.
Yeah. Did you read my slides ahead of time? So actually, someone else before you had that take. Okay, there's a pastor by the name of Bertold von Schenk. He was in New York during the early mid-20th century, and he was known for starting a liturgical renewal movement. So, and he was known for saying, "It was a sad loss to the church, a grave mistake, when a few stupid people pushed the saints out of the picture, out of the life of the church." So apparently during the 1800s and early 1900s, a lot of Lutheran churches and other churches, other denominations also, kind of forgot about the saints. They almost lost that institutional knowledge and didn't really talk about the faithful witness of the people who went before them. Probably with the exception of probably Reformation Day. But they really didn't. Right? And Pastor Schenk's point was that was a sad loss. That was a mistake when we lose that knowledge. Right? And then he also follows it up with, but it was an even greater mistake to place them in the niche of supernatural people. Right? We also don't want to go the other way. Right? We don't want to lift up the saints to the point that they are superhuman.
Demigods.
Right? We don't want to make them like Thor or you know, like demigod or Hercules, right? We don't want to put them to that status. If you've ever been to Italy and been in some of those wonderful chapels, my take on the saints is that they are being good Romans. Yeah. Roman culture loves to bring people up to the supernatural, right? And unfortunately, some Romans also lifted up some people and made them almost superhuman. And I think that's a real shame, right? Because we want to understand that God is merciful and gracious, and despite our imperfections, right? He lifts us up and He saves us by His grace, just like the faithful who have gone before us, right? We don't need to make them into like superheroes, but just people, right? People who were tempted like we were, who failed like we have, yet who held on to the promises of Christ like we did. I think the only exceptions, of course, are when we have a clear written record from Scripture, right? We know that the Scriptures are inerrant, infallible, and so we know for certain that when certain strengths are given to them in certain situations, that we'll confess that Samson, right, had very strong strength because the Lord strengthened him, right? But be cautious in the 1st century, 2nd century, 3rd century, 4th century, because we don't have that clear this is inspired from the Holy Spirit backing. Okay, yeah.
I think that it's something that I've seen Lutherans fall into the trap before. I've been to plenty of Lutheran churches where the Bible study was a study on how awesome Martin Luther was. And I see a lot of times good LCMS Lutherans can put Martin Luther at that almost demigod level when he was a very sinful man.
Yes. Yeah, well, we can. Right. Yeah, stay balanced. Yeah. Robin, Mike? Oh, hey!
So in the immortal words of Karl Marx, he said the easiest way to take over, and actually through Karl Marx was Satan behind all this, I believe. The easiest way to take over a country is to make them forget about their past.
Yeah. True.
So.
Yeah, we don't want to forget about our past. And that includes our Christian past, right? We don't want to forget about our past, right? The good, the bad, and the ugly, right? So that we don't stay captive to sin, to the devil. Right? Good. All right. So, some other reasons why commemorate the saints, right? The saints are Christians, right? We celebrate that there are Christians before us, right? The saints were and still are human beings. We can also commemorate the saints because the saints enjoy rest from their labors, right? we can rejoice that they get to be with Christ and worship before the throne of God in heaven. And you know, they can be at rest, and they can be at peace, and that's something to celebrate. That is something to celebrate, right? It kind of goes back to you shall not covet, right? Sometimes we covet the fact that they get to rest on their labors, right? But no, when we keep the commandment fast, right, we are happy for them. We are thankful to God that He has given them rest. And that's good. And we can have a godly yearning without, you know, being jealous, right? Without coveting. The saints were tempted in sin just like us, right? Your point, right? It's like, you know, these people were sinners just like us, right? They were tempted just like us. And we can learn, right? We can learn from their mistakes. We can be aware of like certain patterns. So it's like, oh, we better be extra aware of certain things, right? But also find comfort knowing that God is merciful to them, just as He's merciful to us. And then, of course, the saint is still Jesus, right? He is the source of holiness for the saints, as the source of holiness for us. All right. So that's on the why. All right. So we covered the what. We covered the why. Now we move on to the how. So what's the pattern for this Bible study coming up? A couple sources. Again, I'm going to follow the Lutheran Service book, pages XII to XIII. Okay, so before the Psalms in your hymnal, there are a couple like charts and graphs, you know, in the forwards. So there is a chart and graph for the commemoration of the saints. I think the page before it is like saints' days, feast days, festival days. And then you have the commemorations page on 12 and 13. Celebrating the Saints by Reverend William Whedon. This is a book. I think it actually is available in the bookstore if you'd like to purchase one. You don't need to. I'm just going to summarize a few things. But, you know, it has a nice 2-page summary for each of those saints that is on this commemoration list. All right, and they give, you know, just a general background, maybe a picture, a hymn verse, or some other Bible references that were really important for this saint's life. Okay?
Pastor, is it in the library upstairs that they can rent it?
I think it is, because actually I borrowed it once.
There you go.
Yes, oh, it's the library book is right here.
Okay, return it at any point.
If anybody has the book called Treasury of Daily Prayer at home, that's the same, and he has, it's the same.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
All right.
I just discovered that after I bought the book.
So yeah, the Treasury of Daily Prayer also has.
Well, you gotta find them.
Oh, but you gotta find them, right?
This is all together in one place. It might be a little bit more in this, but I noticed, oh, this is the same.
Right. Yeah, I would think that most of the Treasury Daily Prayer would go by date, right?
Right,
That, you know, that you just
date.
find the date, right? And this is also by date.
Right.
All right.
You
It
find
is.
it faster.
But yes, well, it's a little quicker, right? It's all in one place. So also from CPH, I clicked on a link and it took me to a homeschooler's guide. So there's a way that you could actually like turn this into a class. You could turn this into a class. And they have like sample essay questions and like diagnostics that you can use to test your homeschooler on the saints. So I'm actually going to borrow some of those questions. I won't grade papers, right?
Benchmark.
But I will lift some of those questions and diagnostics for our topic, because they are just very good, open-ended questions to guide our conversations. Okay? And then yes, this is a list of men and women, clergy and laity, 1st to 20th century, and from various continents. So also the nitty-gritty of the method. I'm going to stay close to schedule as best as I can, according to the commemoration date. So when we start next week on December 4th, there actually is a commemoration on December 4th. Okay? Which is John of Damascus. Okay? So, next Sunday will be John of Damascus. And now this isn't going to work perfectly. I think what I did is I'm skipping the Bible characters. Okay? I'm going to skip the Bible characters. So we're going to focus on church history. So on that commemoration list, if it's a person from the Bible, we're just going to move on. We're just going to focus on the saints in church history. Okay? And there's about 50 of them. So a figure 52 weeks, that's about a year, right? So that's the goal. You know, in about a year's time, we'll cover all the church history saints. Now, when Chappie is in Alabama, we'll see about whether, it'll be covered or not. If it's not, I'll just pick up where we left off, or announce ahead of time, hey, we're going to do this saint, and whether I skip a couple and then go back at the end. I don't know. I haven't quite figured that one out yet. But I will try to stay close to schedule based on the calendar dates, because I think it'd be cool to celebrate and commemorate the actual saint, on that same date or pretty close to that date, right? Just like December 4th is John of Damascus. So I'm going to try to stay as close as possible. All right. So your December saints, we're going to kind of run into Christmas and New Year's here, so we're going to get off right away here, off schedule. But St. Nicholas of Myra, Ambrose of Milan, St. Lucia, Katerina von Bora Luther are, as I say, the first couple in this list. Yeah.
Pastor, I went to St. Cyprian's, and I had never heard any background about St. Cyprian's until I sat in one of these classes here.
Yeah.
Right here in Bethlehem.
Yeah.
And I learned that St. Cyprian was from North Africa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, we name our churches after saints, right? That's a very, not every church is named after a saint, but for a long time, yes, or events, right? And that, it's good to kind of review, especially, kind of like your church's patron saint, right? Or commemorate your church's title every once in a while, right? It's like, we love Christmas so much here at Bethlehem. Right? I love Christmas at Bethlehem here, right? And that's for good reason. Right? Yeah. What we'll cover in each saint. Background information, why they're important to the history, why they're important to the church. Yeah, we're going to spend a little bit of time, identifying some of their trials, tribulations, and temptations, and what we can learn, and see if there's some common trials or common temptations that this particular saint had, maybe so long ago, or in a, not a galaxy far, far away, but a continent, far, far away. Is that, wow, they struggled very similar to what we face today, right? And appreciate, identify, appreciate, and learn from, those trials and temptations. Yes, how we can imitate their faith and godly living in our context and our calling. And a lot of these, in these books, in this book, they usually give like a hymn stanza for the day, for that saint, either because they wrote that hymn or because, their life is described in that hymn or in that verse. I'll probably use that as well for a little devotional purpose. Okay? All right, so we covered what is the commemoration of the saints, why we should commemorate the saints, and what will be the pattern for this Bible study, how we're going to do this over the next year or so. Are there any questions?
What determines if someone's a saint?
Church history. Like whether there's a committee, sometimes there actually is a committee, or a pope, or a council. But, it's just been handed down by Christians who have come together, and that's how they do it. Yeah. I don't know how they update that list. Yeah. Yeah.
Are you talking about how the Catholic Church updates the list?
Yeah.
After 5 years after somebody dies, they get nominated for sainthood.
and then their life is reviewed. And then if it is agreed that they lived a holy life, then they start examining for the miracles. The miracles that are attributed to them through prayer by other people, because this proves that the person is in heaven with God and was indeed holy by their faith. And then the Pope can canonize them, which turns them into saint. Prior to that, there are terms that go with those other layers. Venerable being the one that goes with them leading a holy life of virtue. And so some people only get that far, but they're still called venerable. One was I can't remember her name, sister that started the big church in Scotland.
Yeah.
It's called venerable.
Yeah, and again, there are some things that, as Lutherans, we can agree with that process. And there are some things that we kind of say,
Well, the big one is the miracles, because
Yeah.
the proof of that is that they interceded for the person praying, interceded with God on behalf of that person's prayers.
Yeah.
Which basically puts that person in the place of Christ.
Yeah, there's
This is
danger,
where you get
right?
into the idolatry.
We don't want to
section.
end up with supernatural, right? Or turning people into superhuman, right? And it's like, no.
Morning, Will Robinson, morning.
Right, right. Yeah. All right. So there we go. All right, we got to call it quits for today. So let's stand and pray the Lord's Prayer. Lord, remember us in your kingdom and teach us to pray.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory,